Hello, and welcome back to Balanced and Blissful Energies podcast. I'm Elizabeth Hechavarria, medical doctor, medical intuitive, and energy worker. And I'm here again with Craig Meriwether, who, if you recall from a recent episode, he is a past life regression expert as well as a hypnotherapist. And we are going to talk about my experience with a past life regression that I had with Greg. Greg.
Hello, Elizabeth. How are you? It's been a little bit, about a month
Yeah.
or so, but yeah, I'm excited to get going because it's interesting to talk about it kind of on a theoretical basis, but it's even more interesting to have a discussion with somebody who's experienced it and had a wonderful experience. So this time, if people notice, I don't have my hummingbird painting. I have the sunset painting. I'm in my office, and I'm weirdly shiny because of the light overhead. Don't have my usual lighting thing going on, so I look strangely pale and shiny. So apologize for that. But yeah, a little bit ago, we just had a private past life regression session, and we did the longer version. I can offer 90-minute sessions or 3-hour sessions. And that's in and of itself, they're both the same, but it's just obviously, a longer session. There's more time to spend with the past life and then moving up in that spirit world.
Yeah,
And
I can't
so,
imagine actually a 90-minute. I think 90 minutes in, there was still a lot more to go.
Mhm.
That's kind of how it felt. And just to mention, as the experiencer, the person who's going through the past life regression, the time just flies. You really don't notice that you're lying down for 3 hours.
yeah,
It probably
that's a good point.
different
There's
for you.
a, an interesting time dilution aspect to moving into a trancey state. And while you can call it meditation or hypnosis or trance or this obviously altered state of consciousness by moving down to the alpha, maybe even theta brainwave states, we are having a conversation. You are consciously aware. We want that for the recording, for your own edification and your own research later on. We don't want to analyze anything during the session. We want you to pull in information. You got days, weeks, months, years ahead of you to analyze all the information you gather. So we want this to be a gathering mission, if you will. And so is a conversation. Now, of course, we're doing a group session, even like a group session over Zoom. That obviously has to be more of a generalized past life experience that you're just having on your own in your own body, your own mind. And, obviously writing down, journaling right afterwards is super important. But in terms of doing a one-on-one session, again, over Zoom, or if you happen to be in Flagstaff, Arizona, we can do it in person. But if we're doing one-on-one, we're having a conversation and you're narrating your experience. And I'm sure with my own experiences I've had in the past with past life regression, you're probably only narrating about 10-20% of your experience. You're just
Right.
kinda given the generalized, just to be kind of, broad about it, but if somebody's, like, on a ship out in the ocean, it's, "Well, I seem to be on a ship, and there's a lot of crew around," and, you know, you're not giving the details of every aspect of the ship you're experiencing or the sea, but you're
Hmm.
giving enough detail so that later on, you'll remember your experience, and, with modern day technology, you'll get a transcript of it. It's a fascinating experience.
Yeah, I can just say also from my what it felt like going through with you is that you were asking me, you were prompting me for, first was just to like look at my body to see was I a woman or a man, what was I wearing, and this sort of thing. And because at first, you're like, or at least for me, what happened was that I was in the perspective of that person that I was in some other
Yeah,
lifetime. And I was seeing everything around me as if though I was physically there. And so then looking at my body gave me like a different perception of like, okay, this is
yeah,
actually a physical vessel that I'm inhabiting. I'm not just like remote viewing something or whatever.
right.
Um, and so I found that really helped anchor me into that lifetime that I was in. And then your prompts of like, well, where are you going? Well, what are you doing? That really also helped to kind of orient me to time and place and just get the information that otherwise it was just sort of like being dropped into a movie without necessarily knowing much about the
Yeah.
story. Yes.
Yeah, and this is a memory. It's not like you're time traveling. This isn't like the movie Back to the Future or anything like this. You're not going back in time, um, exploring it as if you're really there. You're just in this way your higher self, your super conscious level mind is bringing you this information. The way your brain, this antenna of your brain is translating the information. It seems like point of view that you're actually there looking through your
It's
own
like a
two
VR
eyes.
movie. It's like a
Yeah.
VR
Yeah.
experience, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, and it may be different the next time you do it. But it's just the way we're sort of we talked about this the first time, but sort of like you're pulling in this digital information through a funnel into this 3D analog brain. And so your mind has to translate it and may have to make some accommodations on how you're experiencing it. It may take a moment for it even to open up. And that's what's frustrating to me is with some people who are doing this experience, or especially if it's a group experience, they may not be able to tell the facilitator or the guide that they're not experiencing anything. It may take a moment for the information to appear or kind of warm up in your brain, sort of like those old TV sets that took, 25, 30 seconds to warm up. You turn it on and there's nothing. And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
there's your image and your sound. It, um, it may take a moment, or I've worked with people, they were blind, so they don't see anything in that past. Not they're blind in this life, they're blind in that past life. I did one where I didn't, it was all black. I didn't see anything. I'd done past life regressions before and never had a quote unquote issue. But this time it was like, it's dark, it's black. I was like, and I was thinking in my mind, I was like, hey, maybe I'm blind or something. And then all of a sudden it just got this intuition to get up and move. And I walked out of a cave. And I was
Mhm.
back in kind of the, 2000 years ago situation. And I don't know if that was more of I was actually doing ceremony or ritual or meditating in the deep, dark passages of caves. The cave paintings way back, way from sunlight that they have in France and Spain, and these cave paintings from 20,000 years ago, where they move way back into the cave to do these cave paintings, and nobody can figure out why they're doing it or how they did it because there's no natural sunlight. They didn't have any flashlights, of course, 20,000 years ago. And so I don't know if it was more of a metaphoric, "Oh, now it's turning on and I'm receiving the information," or I was literally back then in a cave and I just came out of the cave and now I'm moving about my day. And so we experience it differently, maybe at different times, depending on how we need to experience it, or maybe just the growth of our brain or, the growth of ourselves as human beings or souls. But it's an experience we can all have. And I know there's, some information out there, especially around the academic circles, that 10, 20% of the people can't do this. And I don't think that's true at all. I think there's situations that may be uncomfortable where people can't do it, or everybody else gets their information instantaneously. And it may take this other person 30, 45 seconds, a minute for it to open up like an old TV. But if they were prompted beforehand that, well, of the 100 people in this group experience, 15 of you, 20 of you aren't going to have any experience at all. It's like, well, you've just prompted them to, not have an experience because like, oh, well, I don't see anything within the first 2 seconds. So I must be one of those people. And it's like, no, I don't think that's it at all. In fact, I was at a big, huge retreat with a big, huge past life regression person. And he said that because there's 700 people at this workshop, this weekend workshop. And he said that out loud. It's like 10, 20% of you won't have an experience this weekend. And I was like, well, okay, well, you just preloaded that to
Mhm.
all these people who may have an experience of being blind in a past life or being sitting in a cave or, taking a moment for it to warm up. And so I think, and that's where a facilitator, a guide, working one-on-one becomes very useful. Of course, there's recordings you can access on YouTube or maybe Spotify, I don't know, SoundCloud or something. But there's recordings out there you can access, even on my own website, recordings you can access. But now, someone guiding you, if like, well, that didn't work, or I didn't like, I wasn't, the voice didn't help me, or I didn't like the background music or something. Doesn't mean you can't do it. Just means in that particular instance, it wasn't comfortable, or didn't work out for you that time.
I think if I recall my experience in this past life regression wasn't instant. It took me, I think it took a minute before I
Yeah.
started seeing something. Like there's
Yeah.
just a moment of, like you said, tuning in.
Yeah,
Like,
and we might have talked about this last time, but there's that great movie Interstellar by Christopher Nolan, and has Matthew McConaughey and Hathaway. And if you haven't seen it, it's an extraordinary movie. I suggest
mm-mm,
everybody see it. That's the Christopher Nolan movies, including all the Batman movies, the Dark Knight movies, and Inception, and all those movies. I think that might be my favorite. It's the one I've seen the most. And not to give anything away if you haven't seen it. I don't think this gives anything away. But for those of you who have seen it, you know that at the end, he's stuck in the Tesseract, the D world, and he's trying to communicate with the 3D world. And it's not like he can send a fax or send a text message or get on WhatsApp or call on the phone. He has to find unique ways of communicating from the 5D world to the 3D world. Hence the books off the bookshelf and the dust on the floor and the Morse code on the watch and all this stuff. So it's sort of like almost like the same thing. And then uh, as you're pulling in this extraordinary information, this antenna of our brain has to translate it in a certain way. And it's sort of like um, how MP3 files work. So when you're listening to music on your phone, or back in the day, we had MP3 players. But the reason people, audiophiles, complain about MP3 files is that it's deleting certain information off that song. And so that it doesn't have the warmth or it doesn't have the bottom end or something. Now they say they're cutting out the parts of the song that the human ear cannot register. But that's also just part of the song. So if you were to hear it in the studio with their $100,000 worth of equipment and speakers, it's going to sound amazing. But you download it to your phone, you're losing information, and it won't be as rich or warm or anything like that. Maybe not the greatest analogy, but it's sort of like what we're doing here. And again, we're pulling in a memory. So it's just like if I was to ask somebody about school, when you were 16, what school were you going to? Who were your friends? Was it a big school, a small school? Was there dances? Did you do sports? Did you do theater? Did you do music? Did you smoke cigarettes out behind the gym? I'm asking questions like, what would you wear as you went to school? And as you're having a memory of school, you're also cognizant of your life. Well, even though they're not there in that math class that maybe you're experiencing, you also have information. Well, yeah, my brother and sister also go to this school, and I have an older sibling who's a freshman in college now, and my parents do this and that, and you're aware of your life. And so even if you're in I seem to be in a room, and just because of the objects, I seem to be in the 1600s, and sensing the clothing I'm wearing, I'm a man, but I'm in my 30s and I'm married, but I don't know, my family has moved. You're getting that information even though you may just be in a room.
yeah. But let's switch gears though and talk about what, first of all, why you would get dropped into a particular life, dropped into meaning like, reach into that particular memory, and how you can pre-plan that in a way that you're getting information that is useful to you now.
Yeah. And that comes from the phrase we use to get you into that past life that you're looking for. If you go on, back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s and before that, you had like two, three, four television stations. You had to know what station and what time your show was on. But even nowadays, you go on whatever, Netflix or Apple or Hulu or whatever it is, you have to know what show you want to watch. And is it under comedy? Is it under drama? Is it under legal thrillers? Is it under sports? You have to know what show you're looking for. Yeah, you could just randomly pick a show and hope it's good. And we can do that during past life regression as well. But it's nice to have that focused target. So if you were to see this big library, and maybe it's one of those cool old antique libraries with the wood and the ladder that goes up to the third floor of books, and these are just the books of all of the lives you've lived. Well, yeah, you could just pick a book and it'd probably be relatively interesting. But if you wanted to focus on something specific, you'd know which book. Sort of like, again, back in the day, I think I'm dating myself really badly here, but we had the Encyclopedia Britannica, A to
Mhm.
Z. This was our internet back in the 1970s and 80s. And it was like 34 books. And, if you just picked a random book, you were looking at the napkin or the fork or maybe the kangaroo if you were lucky. But if you needed to look at polar bears, you're doing a report for school and you're doing a report on polar bears, you knew which book to pull. So it's the same with this. If we focus on a phrase, go back to the past life that dot, dot, dot. And if somebody is experiencing, let's say, some anxiety or anger, they've done years, and that happens a lot to me. People come to this work because they've done the years of talk therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy or depth psychology or whatever they've been doing, EMDR, and they still hurt and they're still in pain. I still have this anger, this anxiety, and they read Brian Weiss or Dolores Cannon or Michael Newton or my book or whatever, and they say, this feels comfortable, this feels familiar. I think past lives may be the way to go in terms of looking at this anger. So we might say, go back to the past life that is influencing all this anger or causing all this anger in this current life, or go back to the past life that is karmic cause of all this anger in this current life. Maybe there's relationship patterns. Why do I always pick these type of men or these type of women? Why do my relationships always end? Well, go back to the past life that is influencing how I, engage in relationships in this life. We want to make it, you know, fit with what you're wanting to look at. And it may just be out of curiosity. And so, people just want to see a past life because it's fascinating. It's interesting. It's like looking at your genealogy or ancestry. It's fascinating. It can be really interesting. Well, maybe it's just go back to the past life I had before this one, or go back to the past life that is influencing my current life, or most influencing my current life. Your higher self knows what life that is, bring you the right information in the right way. Now, some people may have a very hyper realistic experience of that past life. Like maybe you did, like you're actually there and you sense the clothes on your body and wandering around the different scenes we access. Other people may just kind of sense what is happening as they get some vague images. And that may be because maybe it was super intense and your higher self, maybe your spirit guide even wants some removal from the intensity of that past life. I did a past life regression with somebody, and generally, let me preface this story real quickly with, generally people experience a life. And if somebody lives to whatever, 80, 90 years old, now, of course, we can't experience every day of a 90-year life, even in a 3-hour session. So we're going to focus on 4 or 5 important, specific events in that life that have to do with influencing your current life, have to do with creating this pattern of relationships in your current life, have to do with the anger that person is experiencing in this current life. And so you'll drop into the scene of the first one. Maybe you're 25, maybe you're 12, maybe you're 50 years old, but you'll establish the scene. Then I'll say, I'm going to count to 3, and on 3, you'll move to the next important event, whether you're younger, older, the same age. 1, 2, 3, and you go to the next scene. And it may be linear in chronological order. You start at 8 years old, and then you're 16, and then you're 25, and then you're 40, and then you're 65. It may go like that. It may that start off that you're 30, and then you go to being 12, and then you go to being 85, and then you go to being 50, and then you
That was
go,
more of my
yeah,
experience, right? I think I was
yeah,
dropped
you kind of jumped a
into
little bit. But I had somebody who, this was extraordinarily fascinating for me as well, and they're always fascinating, but this one always stands out because it took place over 3 days. So all those like 4 or 5 important events happened over 3 days in World War II on a Normandy beach situation where and that's what the angst and the anxiety and the fear and the anger and the resentment was these 3 days of, as a young man of whatever, 17, 18 years old, dropped on Normandy beach, seeing his friends get mowed down and just only lasting himself less than 72 hours. But it kept just jumping hours ahead,
mm,
instead of like years as I'm used to, so it's usually decades. Okay, well, I'm 25, now I'm going to be 8 years old, and now I'm going to be 45 or something like that. This happened just within less than 72 hours because that's what he had to work on. That was what needed to get resolved. Now, not everything is an issue of resolution or healing. That can certainly be why, but can be just for fun. It can be just, again, like you're looking for your ancestry or your genealogy. And it may be if you have a specific talent that you want to look at. If somebody's great at music, a specific instrument, or dance, or martial arts, or sports, something. It may be that you want to look at, why am I so good at mathematics or science as opposed to something else? And there's an idea in the world of past life regression that it takes multiple lifetimes to get that to that mastery, to that level of virtuosity. So let's take Yo-Yo Ma, considered one of the great cello players of all time. And he started playing violin at the age of 3. He started playing cello at the age of 4. Considered a master, not only in classical music, but he does all sorts of different kinds of music with his Silk Road Ensemble and all sorts of things. The theory is that took him multiple lifetimes to get that level of mastery of the cello. And probably in the first life when he started, he sucked at it, and so he grew over lifetimes to become the virtuoso as a little kid, even sort of like Bruce Lee with martial arts, or Meryl Streep with acting, or pick any sort of mathematical genius or scientist. It took multiple lifetimes to get that level of being able to write those crazy equations on the chalkboard that you see in the movies or TV shows. And so we could look at something like that, go back to the past life where I started my journey as a guitar player or a scientist or whatever it is, or maybe a culture. I'm Craig Meriwether. You can't get more United Kingdom than that. I'm Scottish, I'm Irish, I'm English. It's like literally like 96% of my ancestry is that little island. I guess it's not little, but that island of the United Kingdom. And the other is like German and French. Literally that's it. That's my ancestry. And yet I have a great love and fondness and interest in Middle Eastern countries, in India and North Africa. It's like, why? Not South America, not Central America, not Australia, not the central and southern parts of Africa. It's like just these specific regions. I'm fascinated by it. And I love traveling to those places when I can. And so it has nothing to do with my ancestry, nothing to do with my genetics or where I come from in terms of my culture. So why is that? Have I had past lives, living in those areas? And you can look at that, because again, utterly fascinating to find out more about yourself. And that's what we can do in past life and moving into that past life. So just really briefly, again, whether it's a shorter session like 90 minutes or more of a 3-hour experience, it's pretty much run exactly the same. It's just one's longer. It's the difference between a 90-minute movie and a 3-hour movie. It's like you're just going to get more movie. So with this experience, if you've never done any of this kind of work before, whether of hypnotherapy or past life regression, we'll do a warm-up exercise, just kind of showing you how it works and that you can do it, warming up the 5 senses kind of thing. And then we'll move into experience. We'll talk a little bit more about what you want to work on. We'll have emailed back and forth a few times, maybe even gotten on the phone call to talk about it. But, if we're doing a Zoom session, I'll send information about how a Zoom session works and how to get comfortable in your own home and all that. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll do the warm-up exercise, but then we'll move right into the past life regression. And again, we're looking at 4 or 5 different specific events in that life. We're going to get to the last day in that life, because that's the real important part, because that's when a lot of the throwing action, if you will, the connections to this current life can happen. What are the last thoughts and emotions you're having in that life? Is life fair or unfair? Is love easy or hard? Is abundance easy to come by? Was it an intense life? Was there a lot of regret or anger or anxiety around that life? And has that been resolved, or is that being carried forward as
Mhm.
that at the end of that life? And then as you move up into spirit, as you move out of that body, we then go up into spirit world, or what Michael Noon calls life between lives, what his books Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls describes with the thousands of people he worked with over decades. And there's that experience of being up as a soul up in that life between lives and engaging maybe with your soul family, with your spirit guide, creating healing there in all the ways you need and want, and getting more information about your current life, purpose and mission, and why do you live where you live in the body that you have, with the family that you're surrounded with, or the friends you have. And you
Mhm.
get a lot more clarity, not only in maybe other past lives you've lived, that are connected to this current life, but also the people in your life and maybe more about why you're even here. And so you can see how, yeah, a 90-minute experience is pretty powerful, but the longer experiences, even though it may seem not like 3.5 hours, you can get a lot more work done, a lot more information. Or we split it up into multiple sessions or however people want to do experience it, but it's pretty powerful.
Yeah. And I just want to share that from the perspective of the person who's going through the experience. I could not really make sense of things as I was going through it, meaning I was just felt like I was reporting back a lot of information. I was feeling things. I was feeling some of the emotions, some of the regrets. And it wasn't really until I got to the life between lives part of the session that I could start to see the how things were, like what the relationship was with my current life, what were the resonances with my current life, and where um things where I was sort of like in this life dropped into that movie of and take it from here, right? And take it from the end of that life and how are you going to resolve that bit that you said I could have done that better.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, you can be 85, 90 years old, 103 years old in this current life and still be feeling the hurt and pain of things that happen, abuse, or maybe growing up in an unsafe home, things that happen when you're 5, 6 years old, even earlier. And so if you can hold on to that stuff for some 80 years, decades and decades, and it still affects you physically, like you're just explaining, you're having a physical response to some of the issues that you're having to resolve and you're going through and you're experiencing again. But it's just like, again, remembering back in school, maybe somebody who got bullied when they were 10 or 11, 12 or 16 or 18, they got bullied and you're thinking about it 80 years old and you're like, yeah, when I was in school, they did bully me and they make fun of me and they called me names and that hurt and that resentment and that anger may come right back, even though it was decades ago. And so you can imagine, well, what about the deeper experience of us as souls, as spirits? What if we're holding on to something that happened, being dropped down on Normandy Beach? This whole thing probably happened to him within, 2 months of getting either joining or, the army and then quick basic training and then on a plane and boat to Normandy Beach and then it's done.
Yeah.
That's got to cause a lot of hurt and pain because
Yeah.
it didn't get resolved and it wasn't fair and it shouldn't have happened. Just as we can hold on to stuff for decades and decades and decades, maybe 70, 80 years here in this life, well, is it possible that we may be holding on to issues from other lives that didn't get resolved?
Well, it's coming forward with us, right? It's coming
Yeah.
in our subconscious, in that collective conscious as well. Collective
Yeah.
consciousness that are, how many wars have we lived through as humanity? How much pain and suffering have we inflicted on each other? And that still lives with us. And especially you see it in countries, right? In regions that are still at odds with each other because that still lives there
Yeah.
within the people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they even had those genetic experiments they did with the children of Holocaust survivors have a genetic marker for fear that is not in the children of people who did not experience the Holocaust. So there can even be not only just a more spiritual essence to this fear or anger or anxiety somebody may go through, there may actually be a genetic component to it as well, an ancestral line. And
There
so
definitely
maybe,
is. The epigenetic markers,
yeah,
that's transmissible, so that changes that happen due to a severe emotional or physical stress, that gets imprinted on the genetic code, and that gets transmitted from one parent to the next. I mean, from down the generations, it gets
yeah,
transmitted down generations, yeah. For at
yeah,
least 4 generations, at least that was the case in rats when I last checked.
yeah. Yeah, and that may just be the ability of the science they have now, just to go back 4 generations.
Yeah.
But and that's the extraordinarily fascinating thing about this. The anger, the anxiety, what if it's not even yours? What if it's an ancestral issue? And that's one of the most important things you're here for. Not only the other aspects of life that you're doing, maybe raising family or running a business or working your career or doing the things you're doing, helping out a friend when they're going through a traumatic experience in their life. But what if you're also here for the aspect of being that centering point to finally heal that ancestral issues that your family line may be going through? Wonderful education at ancestral medicine. I think I'm getting it right. Daniel Four. Look up Daniel Four, Dr. Daniel Four, Foor. And does wonderful work with teaching people how to heal, uh, ancestral issues like that. And even looking, going through, he does courses, and there's other people. It's not just him. There's other practitioners who run the courses and things. And now there's practitioners around the world. He's been doing this training for 20 years or so. So there's practitioners around the world, maybe somebody even in your own town who's done his year-long training program. But you start with one of the four grandparents because you have a mother and father, and your mother and father had a mother and father. And so you start seeing these lines of people, whether it's patriarchy or your mother's side. Let's say your mother's side, your mother's father, your mother's mother, and their family line. And you start with one of the four grandparents, and you just start the healing work. It's quite incredible. But there's also an aspect of one experience I went through, one that really got me into wanting to do hypnotherapy as a career, as a profession, learning, training in this, and specifically the spiritual side of this work, and wanting to understand how to help people heal that in that spiritual way by understanding how to use hypnotherapy for trauma reversal and even physical pain control and relief, as well as, dealing with confidence, but the anxiety, anger, the resentment people may be holding on to. Having that clinical hypnotherapy foundation, then learning the spiritual side of things, which I did at the Hypnotherapy Academy of America here in New Mexico, here in the United States. Extraordinary school, 500 hours of mostly the clinical hypnotherapy, medical hypnosis, like pain control, healing, acceleration. But then at the end, you can add on the more spiritual side of that. Now that you understand healing with subconscious mind and body, now you can take that to a more deeper spiritual level. And I had an experience of a spontaneous past life emotional release with a friend who I was communicating with just over the phone. She had been having dreams. We reconnected, having kind of lost touch for about 10, 12 years just due to family and just being opposite sides of the country. And we reconnected and we were talking on the phone, and she'd been having these dreams, like bits and pieces. It seemed to be a kind of a World War II experience. And we end up talking about stuff like this for hours. And we were on the phone one time, we just kind of got to a moment of silence. And then as we were about ready to kind of hang up, and I just started sobbing hysterically for no reason
You
other
did.
than, yeah, I did. I'm on the phone, and I'm not really, I'm very skeptical about this kind of stuff. And if you excuse the expression, but I'm kind of skeptical about the woo-woo stuff. I grew up as Episcopalian and a Baptist. So I went to a Baptist school, but went to an Episcopal church. Those are two very divergent philosophies and theories of Christianity. And that was my upbringing, very much religion and church. But I was fascinated by spirituality. And as my world opened up, this is 1980s, and I graduated high school. So there's no internet. It wasn't like you can just look this stuff up. You seriously have to search out books and things and do your own homework about it. But as my world opened up, as I got into my 20s and learned more about the world and culture and people and their spiritual beliefs, my world sort of opened it up. Too much on not reincarnation, not angels and things like this, until, slowly started opening up to the entirety of the New Age bookstore. And so it was slow, and a slow drip for me. The whole thing about dreams and past lives, and it's like, I don't know, I'm talking to my friend about it, and I wasn't much believing it. I guess that's their experience. I don't get it. because I don't have those experiences. Deal with all this in a different way, which is just the way I guess I have to deal with it this time around. But I was on this phone call and out of nowhere, I just started sobbing hysterically. And I'm talking to her on the phone. I'm like, um, situation where this couple in a relationship got separated in Germany, concentration camp kind of situation. Nazis involved, this whole dramatic thing, and that she's been telling me about in pieces with these dreams she's having. And all of a sudden, I just started sobbing. I can't find you. I can't find you. I don't know where you went. I don't know what happened to you. And she doesn't know what's going on the other side of the phone, on the other side of the country. And there's half of me that's like experiencing this emotional release, and the other half of me saying, I don't know what's happening. And I'm saying this to her on the phone. I don't know what's going on here. While this kind of schizophrenic, you know, things happening to me. And finally, she just says, do you need me to forgive you? Because I'm looking for her
Mhm.
in this, the roles we're playing here, I guess. And I say, yeah. And she said, okay, I forgive you. It wasn't your fault. And it just released. And to say, I was like, I have no idea what that was about. Again, I wasn't sensing the dreams or anything. I just had this extraordinary emotional release of this information. And after that, it's like, okay, I got to find out what this is all about. And it led me more into the past life work and more about hypnotherapy. I'd already used it myself for some healing of current life stuff. And it's my skepticism and my disbelief about a lot of the stuff that makes me want to learn more about it. It's my whole book, Past Lives Guidebook, is about my skepticism and looking into the science of it all and the history of it all and what other cultures and religions think about it. And it's just fascinating to me that we may be holding on to stuff. And I can't tell you that that was even my role back in that situation. Maybe I was holding it on for somebody in my soul group, our
Mhm.
soul thing. This kind of, according to the Michael Newton work of Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls, we have these soul groups, sort of like you meet all your friends in first grade, when you're 5 years old at your first year of school, and you just follow, you just keep going in the same class, maybe with the same teacher, like your same spirit guide, and you just play different roles. It's like you're actors in an acting troupe, a theater troupe. And in the first of the year, you're doing one play, and everybody has a certain character and a role they're playing. Here's the script, and here's how the characters are going to develop from act 1 to act 3. Then you take a break, and then in March you do another play, but you're all playing different characters and different roles in a different time period, different part of the world even. But you're still the same actors, you're still the same people. Just now
Mhm.
you're playing a different role, a different part in a different situation. Well, what if my friend and I, and maybe the others that were involved in the situation here on Earth this time around, what if we came to help some of our soul group release and let that go because it was so traumatic?
Mhm.
We were like conduits of that healing. That was one of the theories I've come up with, having thought about it for the last 10 years. What if that whole situation, meeting her again, just like reconnecting almost by accident, set up that whole thing? Okay, now it's time to heal this. You're both in a place emotionally, spiritually, in life, older now, that you can be the conduits to help your friends, your soulmates, part of your soul family, heal this. Maybe it really was us back then, or I don't know. Maybe it was ancestor type healing using the metaphor of World War II. And this is the thing that is fun to think about and journal about and talk over a cup of coffee or something for a bit. But I don't know that we have the capacity in this world to really understand it all, the entirety of that huge library of
Mm.
information. I think we could pull bits and pieces of it. And it's sort of like that story of the four blind men and the elephant, and they're touching the elephant, and one says, oh, I have a snake. One says, I have a tree trunk. One says, I have a piece of rope or something. It's like we're just getting bits and pieces of it, and we don't see the entirety of the elephant.
Yeah.
That's my
I think
theory of life.
I
Might
think
might
that
might change next week, but that's it right now.
yeah, no, I think that's true for so much of our experience here in this lifetime on Earth, and well, in all of these lifetimes on Earth is we have a limited bandwidth, right? A limited perception that we can process and make sense of. And some have more bandwidth than others. Some can access rather spontaneously more information, I think that when you need that kind of access, you go for it. You go to,
Yep.
it's a psychic medium or somebody who works in the Akashic records like I do, or yeah, and you try to get more of this meaning making information. And that meaning making is really what helps get through difficult experiences in this lifetime. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what you say is absolutely true. It's just like talent in anything. I can play tennis, but there's no way I'm hitting a 120-mile-an-hour ball back to some, when I'm playing against one of the greats. And just like we can all probably to a certain extent learn how to play the guitar, or play the piano, or play the cello. But there's some people who just have that gift of that instrument, or I can do math, but I don't have the ability to just do those wild equations just off the top of my head. And so there's people with certain skills and talents, including on the more spiritual side too. We have the ability to do this work, but there may be others who have the type of connection that allows them to, like what you say, you can read other people's records and help them maybe understand more about what they're going through. Maybe have the ability to see, okay, well, these last 10 lives seem to be connected in a way. If somebody has that kind of talent and ability, yeah, take me to the doctor. I don't like try to fix the broken leg myself with two, pieces of wood and a splint and a rubber band. I just, I want to take me to a doctor who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, but the fun part of what you're offering through past life regression and others are offering as well through past life regression is that you get to dip into that yourself and get some of that direct information yourself through the assistance, of course, of your higher self, leading you to that lifetime and those snapshots of that lifetime that will help you to either resolve something that's really difficult right now, for example, anxiety or anger or grief, or to help make sense of like your life trajectory, as that was something that I experienced. And what I was looking at was I asked like about how to look at a lifetime that was reflecting or that would help me understand how my experience, or not just my work, like my vocational experience, say the shifting vocational experiences that I've had and how that is influencing me now. And that's exactly what I was shown.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be super important because sometimes you need that person to help you put the pieces together, line them up. But it's also the difference between like somebody explaining to you, your school years between 12 and 18 and you remembering them and experiencing them, you know, both can be useful and helpful. It's just kind of more about probably what you're in need of accessing. And again, it's like that also the fun of like your ancestry. You can just have somebody do it for you and get the information. That's fine. But sometimes the hunt is a little bit fun too. And that discovery of it yourself is kind of fun. But again, it's also that idea of that movie Interstellar. It's like, yeah, there's all this information and you're pulling it into this 3D world and it may communicate to you in a unexpected way. Cause we read the books, Brian Weiss or Dolores Cannon, whatever, it sounds very exciting and fascinating and maybe got goosed a little bit by the editor, the publishing house to make it a funner read, or maybe that's how this one person, because Many Lives, Many Masters, the book that kind of set off the modern day past life regression movement, that's just about one person and her one, several experiences, but of one, this one past life. And that doesn't mean how it's going to be for the other 8 billion of us here on planet Earth. We all experience it in a different kind of way. Doesn't make it less worthy or valuable. Just your expectations may be, I read the book and this is how it's going to be for everyone. And when it's not that way, it's still valuable. And you're bringing in the information the way you need it to be given to
Right.
you
That's
because you're the
very,
one getting it.
yeah.
You know, so this doesn't mean it's wrong or invaluable or you're doing it wrong. No, you're doing exactly right because this is the way it's happening. Yeah.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for
Yeah.
your time. I'm conscious of your time limitations as well. So if there's anything else that you want to share before closing.
I'm happy to talk to anybody about this. If you have any questions whatsoever, certainly email me or we'll get on a Zoom call or something and chat about it. I'm happy to do that. People or a phone call. Sacredmysteryhypnotherapy.com is where you can find me. And the book, if you're interested, Past Lives Guidebook, talks more about the science and the history of it all. Start off with Neanderthal burial sites and it indicates any sort of thoughts about life after death with Neanderthals 50,000 years ago. And then we come up to present day science. So, yeah, it's an interesting book, more born out of my own curiosity and skepticism about it all. And I think by the end of the book, you just have to walk away with, yeah, this is absolutely true.
Yeah.
But the science seems to indicate it and doesn't seem to indicate this is a one and done. So it's a fascinating, fascinating world. So if any questions, certainly reach out. I'm happy to talk with you about it.
Thank you. Thank you all for watching. And please remember to subscribe and hit the like button and share your comments. Have any of you experienced a past life regression? Has that helped? Has it opened up new areas of exploration for you? Love to hear it. Thanks.